What's up, Tailgaters? A year in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. The road to predict all 136 FBS level college football teams this summer is now going to take us into Athens, Ohio, where the Ohio Bobcats, this one's for you, Steven, are going to be moving on from the Tim Albin era, but will they still find success even with the new head coach? My name is Nate Pope, otherwise known as Tailgate Nate. Thank you all so much for clicking on this video and for helping to support the channel. If you would like to, I would be greatly appreciative if you would help support the channel in any way you can, especially by hitting that subscribe button. Turning on notifications even while you're down there will ensure you don't miss an upload during prediction season, and especially not an upload that involves your favorite team. Now, I am a sports media, or I should say was a sports media major. I am a sports media graduate, and am delving into the professional world of the industry. If you want to see all the cool stuff I get to do while still being up to date on what goes on this YouTube channel, give me a follow on social media at TailgateNate29 on Twitter, Instagram, and you can even email me, tailgate829@gmail.com. I want to thank you all so much for supporting and interacting with me and the channel, in whatever way or fashion you may be doing so. With all that said and done and out of the way, let us dive on into talking about this Bobcat program and their new head coach, who you see right over here, Brian Smith. Now, they did not outsource this head coach. They promoted from within. Brian Smith entered this program in 2022, worked his way up to the offensive coordinator role last year, and now he is their head coach. So he is familiar with the program, is familiar with the system, and albeit there are going to be a lot of things that change about this Ohio program, especially after moving on from a legendary head coach in Tim Albin, coming over to Brian Smith, I don't think you're going to see many super major changes, but you might see some changes. But despite any of that change, there is a lot of talent here. Will Ohio still find some good success? And can they defend their MAC championship here in 2025? Well, we're going to dive on into a roster overview to find that out. Offense over here to the left, defense over here to the right. At the end of the video, we are going to talk about the Ohio Bobcat football schedule, and I will give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. This video overall is here to tell all of you what I think about the Bobcats in 2025. Before we get started, bam, right down below me, returning production numbers. According to ESPN, they factor in transfer portal additions up to a certain percentage. And then even below that, recruiting and transfer portal ranks for the class of 2025 are according to 24/7 Sports. Now I'm going to talk about why those numbers may not be as big of an issue, at least the recruiting and portal ranks, and that offensive returning production number, because when you talk about this offense, again, because Brian Smith was the offensive coordinator last year, Scott Isfording has now been promoted to take over that role here with this program. And one of the dreams of any offense, especially a new offensive coordinator, have a constant at the quarterback position. Bam, you get it right here. Parker Navarro is going to be coming back. And I think Navarro's got a lot of upside. And as I read off his stat line, you're probably going to see and be like, oh, that's where he needs to improve. Because there is improvement that needs to be made. 2,423 yards, 13 touchdowns, 11 interceptions on 66% completion percentage. I think it goes without saying that touchdown interception number needs to be improved. I know I said it goes without saying. I said it anyway. But what also needs to be said, his passing stats are just a flash of what Parker Navarro can do. Obviously, it's the most vital thing a quarterback can have. But man, this Parker Navarro kid can run the damn ball. 1,054 yards and 18 rushing touchdowns on 6.6 yards per carry. You also have to keep in mind that quarterbacks' rushing stats account for their sack yardage, and he was sacked 18 times last season. Now, albeit part of that was because he likes to get outside of the pocket and move, and it counts as a sack even though he was trying to run, whatever. Over 1,000 yards with sack yardage, 18 touchdowns. That is amazing. If he can develop that passing ability, if he ups that touchdown to interception number, I'll say 25 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. I don't think that's that lofty compared to what weapons you have in this offense that we're going to dive on into here in a second. I think if that happens, Parker Navarro's easily hitting 3,000 yards, and this Ohio offense could prove to be one of the best in the Mid-American Conference. It did struggle to throw the football at times last season. What it didn't struggle to do was run the ball. It got almost 3,000 rushing yards and averaged over 5 yards per pop last year. Leading rusher Anthony Tyus is going to be gone. 1,215 yards and 9 touchdowns on 237 carries. He obviously was that main primary back and got a big bulk of the carries, and there is a lot of depth behind him that does leave. So, okay, you're wondering, well, what's the guy that's going to come in and replace that? Well, technically it's a new face, but in reality, it's a very familiar one. C.A. Bangura is coming back to this team after not taking a year off or anything like that. No, he was a star at Ohio in 2022 and in 2023. 1,078 yards and 13 touchdowns in 22. And in 23, 811 yards and 7 touchdowns. He went to go try his luck in the Power 4, and it didn't work well for him. He went to Minnesota, got lost in the pretty talented running back room. Obviously, Darius Taylor is there. He could prove to be one of the better running backs in the Big Ten Conference. So what did he decide to do? Well, a pretty sensible thing, if you ask me. He said, okay, it didn't work here. I'm going to go back to where I had a lot of success. And you put those rushing stats there. Then you look at his receiving stats too. He can provide value as a pass catcher out of the backfield. 226 yards and a pair of touchdowns in 22. And in 23, 18 catches for 159 yards and a touchdown. I didn't say it before, but 27 catches for him in 2022. Why is that vital? Well, when you lose Anthony Tyus, you do lose a guy that also can catch passes out of the backfield. Had 137 yards and 2 touchdowns and a similar yards per carry or yards per catch number than what C.A. Bangura was doing during his previous stints with this Bobcat program. What's more is once you dive on into the wide receiver room and the tight end room, Coleman Owen is going to be gone. He is now in the NFL with the Indianapolis Colts and just was a star receiver for the team last year. 78 catches, 1,245 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Out of the 13 touchdowns that Navarro threw, 8 of them went to Coleman Owen. So that's a big and massive loss. But outside of him, most of the producers are going to be returning again for this program. Chase Hendricks, Rodney Harris, Caleb Gossett. Those are going to be your 3 main wide receivers. And we're 2, 3, and 5 when it comes to receiving yardage last year. Well, number 4 was your lead tight end, who also comes back. Mason Williams is back to lead this tight end room. They all saw at least 150 yards of production, and I would probably find it very hard to believe if you came and told me that not one of them had a lower or similar total than what they had last year. That got phrased really horribly. Basically what I'm trying to say, and I know I probably didn't say it well, I would expect all 4 of those guys to have an increased level of production this year. And the reason that I talk so much about C.A. Bangura is because, again, you're going to slot him into the Anthony Tyus role from last year for lack of better terminology. And it's a necessity to have a guy that can catch out of the backfield, which is what Bangura can do when you want to throw him in that role. Will Bangura have the production that Tyus did last year, at least from a rushing standpoint? I think that's going to be a little difficult. However, I think he's going to get back to what he was doing previously with this program. And I think, again, Bangura, as he's fit in once before with this program, he'll fit in well again. Offensive line time. It's still going to be one of the most experienced and talented units in the Mid-American Conference, even though 3 spots are going to need to be filled. Most notably, Parker Titsworth is gone off the offensive front. Still think this is going to be a good unit. Still think they open up a lot of holes for the run game. And I think that they can even improve in some ways at being able to protect Parker Navarro when he drops back to pass. Overall, this is a Bobcat team that, even though that returning production number really doesn't look that high, you could consider Bangura returning production kind of, not technically based off of last year, but he was with the program. He was gone last year. Now he's coming back. Bam, you get a guy to fill in for Anthony Tyus. It's going to be like Anthony Tyus isn't gone at all. Basically, layman's terms, layman speaks. Bangura, I think, is going to fill that role beautifully. I think you got a really good wide receiver room that isn't going to be reliant on one guy in Owen. I think you got a lot of guys that you can pepper the football around to, keeping defenses on their toes. And again, I still think the offensive line is going to be pretty solid. Now, different conversation with the defense that is coached by John Hauser. The defense last year was one of the Mid-American Conferences and the nation's better sides. They were top 20, I believe top 20. If not, they were pretty close to getting into the top 20 in fewest points per game allowed. They allowed just over 300 yards per game last year, but it wasn't by much, and it was one of the better marks in the country there as well. And it's a Bobcat team that is still going to be very well coached on the defensive side by John Hauser. And the secondary probably is going to show some signs of getting better with all that they return. However, when you talk about this front seven, there are countless, endless amount of pieces that are going to be leaving. You lose sack leaders, you lose leading tacklers, all of it and more, especially a lot of depth, is going to exit from this linebacking room. Let's just start off here. Leading tackler, Blake Leak, 94 tackles, 3 passes defended, and a pick. Yep, he's gone. Shea Taylor transferred over to Charlotte, had 73 tackles as the team's third leading tackler, 3 sacks, 4 passes defended, and an interception there as well. Also did force 2 fumbles. Your leading tackler on the defensive line and probably most talented player, Marcel Walker-Burgess. I believe you're going to be losing him this season as well. That is a very big and notable loss. You want to keep going down further, you lose your sack leader from last season, Bradley Weaver. He's transferred over to Rutgers, and I could go on and on with names that are leaving this defensive front seven. So there's going to be a lot to have to replace. And again, that's where this 122nd ranked portal class doesn't look so great, because albeit you brought in a lot of defensive linemen through the transfer portal that are going to be sort of answering the questions for you, or trying to do so, as far as the talent that you do lose. I'm going to pronounce this name wrong, I know it, so apologies for that. Anis Luqman, however you say the last name, it's Luqman. Nehemiah Dukes and Evan Herman are all transfers coming in, and albeit you bring some experienced pieces back, they're going to need to fill in and play much bigger roles than they did last season. Linebacker room, complete unknown. You return Jack Freeze, who I think is actually going to be a pretty solid piece for you. Michael Molnar, okay, we'll see what he's going to be. And then you do get a freshman in Charlie Christopher, but to me, beyond those 3 names, it is a gigantic mystery, as you don't really get anyone in from the transfer portal in that linebacking room. So there, to me, is some unknown as far as how this front seven is going to produce. Last year, 35 sacks, and they were a really, really good rush defense. I think overall you could see that production take a step back, and I don't think by much. I don't think it's going to take leaps and bounds backwards and they're suddenly going to start allowing 150 rushing yards per game this season. I just don't foresee that happening. However, to me, I think it's pretty likely that this team goes from allowing under 100 rush yards per game to allowing over 100 rush yards per game. By how much? Probably not that much, but I definitely think you're going to see some steps back. Now, you could see some steps forward in the secondary, even though Dustin Johnson is going to be gone. He was your leading tackler out of the secondary last year. 77 tackles, 4 passes defended, did recover a fumble in there as well. But you do get a lot of really, really nice returning pieces. By the way, you also do lose, again, just some other good depth pieces, but this guy was a big one. Roman Parody. He is going to be gone. He is now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 10 passes defended and a pick out of the corner last year. However, in saying that, Tank Pearson, 6 passes defended and led the team with 4 interceptions, was the only guy on the defense that had more than 1 pick last year. And then DJ Walker, top 5 tackler, who had 53 tackles and was second on the team in passes defended with 7 of them last season, only behind Parody, of course, who is now in the NFL with the Bucs. By the way, Pearson was 3rd on that list. So you do get some really good secondary pieces back, and you even get more back that I'm just simply not going to have time to mention and talk about here. Michael Mack, Adonis Williams, and even a transfer in Ricky Hyatt. So I think the secondary is by far and away got the most questions answered, and as of right now is going to be the defense's most talented unit, and I think you can see it take a step forward in the right direction this year. Special teams room, freshmen will be highlighting that rebuilt unit. Hey, kickers are people too. When you take a look at this defense as a whole, it has a ton of questions to answer for me. Again, 35% returning production defensively, and most of that is coming in this secondary. There are a lot of unknowns to me in the front seven, on the defensive line, in the linebacking room, and I very well could see it take a step back. Overall, I don't see this defense, again, taking leaps and bounds back, and they were good at being able to force the big decisive plays last year. Again, I already mentioned 35 sacks. They did force 20 turnovers last year, 47 passes defended out of everybody on this defense. Great. Keep that up. I think are going to be some pretty major changes you'll see on the defensive side, and it is really, really, I think, going to be hard for this defense to adjust right away, in considering that these are the 3 games that they have to start out the college football season with. Yikes. Yikes. On the road at Rutgers, you're at home against West Virginia, which again, I actually really, really like a lot. Talk about that when I get there. And then you're on the road against Ohio State. I think first time you play the Buckeyes since 2015. That is a brutal non-conference stretch. But before I get into my predictions, let's put that on pause for a minute and look at some numbers down below me from FanDuel. Again, not me telling you to go place your money. You do what you want with it. You did earn it. I'm no betting expert, but it does provide some nice, good context to see how good the odds makers perceive the Bobcats to be this season. Well, plus 300 odds to win the conference is second, only behind that to the Toledo Rockets, who return a lot. Plus 3,500 odds to get into the college football playoff. Not the longest odds. I think the longest odds you get on FanDuel are 10,000. And so Ohio still has got a pretty decent shot to get in there, but they are probably going to have to win, I'd say, at least two of those first three games, and it's got to be those first two. I just don't see them winning on the road in Columbus. Ohio State's the far superior and more talented team, and I got to be honest with you, with how much Ohio has to replace defensively, I think the offense can hold its own against some of these defenses, but on the road at Rutgers, that Ohio offense is going to get challenged off a really good defensive scheme coached by Greg Schiano. And when you want to talk offensively about Rutgers, well, Ethan Kaliakmanis took a big step in the right direction as a quarterback last year. And yes, I know, you have no more Kyle Monangai in the backfield. I think you still got some solid skill position pieces. And again, it's a very well-coached defensive unit. Ohio will see their struggles. At home against West Virginia, before I tell you why I think they're going to lose this game, I'll just flash it up there now. I love that Power 4 teams are going on the road to play Group of 5 teams. I think it's great. It's phenomenal. And yes, West Virginia is trying to replace quite a bit too. However, there is a lot more known at West Virginia than there is at Ohio, and I think the talent level also sees its advantages here with the Mountaineers. Nico Marchiol and Jaheim White, I think, are going to be really, really difficult for this defense to stop. They did get a lot of really good transfer portal pieces that are going to be coming into this team as well. And Rich Rodriguez is back there. And while I think it takes a little bit for him to get adjusted to the new Big 12 and get his system set again in this program, in order for the really, really big expectations to start kicking in with this West Virginia team, like you saw Rich Rod doing during his previous stint, this is a West Virginia team that I think is going to give it to this Bobcats program, and I think is going to be a really, really difficult matchup for the team in Athens to be able to handle. So they lose that one at home, and I already told you, I don't think this one needs much explanation. They're going to go on the road and lose to the Ohio State Buckeyes. It just quite simply, talent gap is way too big. Ohio State's coming off winning a national championship. And again, I just don't see Ohio having everything figured out defensively. And even though the secondary can improve, you're not locking down Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis, and I could go on and on. However, the losing will end because they will finally be able to play everything together. I have full confidence in them ending that losing skit week 4 against Gardner-Webb, an FCS opponent, where I think they're really going to start to see things rolling. And even though I do think Bowling Green is going to provide some unique challenges out of the Mid-American Conference this year, you do have Eddie George as that head coach. You are trying to replace a ton of talent. Starting quarterback is going to be new. Terrion Arnold is gone out of the running back room. I believe he transferred over to Virginia Tech, if my memory serves me correctly. Lead receiver and just one of the best tight ends in college football last year, Harold Fannin, is wearing the same colors in the Professional Football League. He is now a Cleveland Brown. I still would not count Bowling Green out, though. I think Finn Hogan is a really good wide receiver. I think RJ Garcia is a really good wide receiver. I think Drew Pine is a good enough quarterback to lead this team to a successful season. And I like the running back transfer when Chris McMillan comes in from Northeast Mississippi Community College. Not a guy that you're going to have a lot of notes and spreadsheets on and be able to look up easily in your Excel document, but he is a guy that, after doing research, yep, he's pretty darn good. So I think he fits in well. Defensively, I do have some questions, and that's where I think Bowling Green loses this game. Ohio will be able to get that win at home, and I think they're going to go on the road and beat Ball State either. Caden Samanza is now over at Tulane, and now, surprisingly enough to him, he's going to try to battle out with Jake Retzlaff. Again, we'll see how much Retzlaff plays and whatnot. There is still some sort of thing going on there, but beyond all of that, I actually believe that most of that is wrapped up now, but beyond all of that, he is walking on, getting implemented in a new system. Anyway, I'm not talking about Tulane here. Talking about Ball State, yeah, okay, still some solid pieces, but I think that's a Cardinal team that, even when you had Caden Samanza and a couple of those other really good players, for the past couple of seasons, they still really did struggle. So Ball State loses that one to Ohio. I think Ohio beats Northern Illinois here as well. Now, if this one was on the road, I think it could get really, really tricky. But Northern Illinois, and honestly, it's still going to be tricky, even here at home. Northern Illinois is one of the more difficult teams to beat night in and night out in the Mid American Conference, and it's because Thomas Hammock is one of the better coaches in the conference. However, new pieces at wide receiver, new quarterback, new running back, new defensive pieces, albeit some good experience does come back. Again, for Northern Illinois, it's a lot of change. And even though it's a lot of change for this Bobcat program, I think Ohio sees more talent than what Northern Illinois does there in that program. On the road against Eastern Michigan, went back and forth with this one because I think the directional Michigan schools are going to be quite the challenge for teams this year. I really do, especially when you consider what Eastern Michigan is bringing in through the transfer portal. Noah Kim is coming in there, and I like Dante McMillan at the running back position. They have Terry Lockett, Porter Rooks, and a ton of other graduate students that you can point at in that wide receiver room, and they got one of the most experienced, at least front sevens, if not overall defenses, the Mid-American Conference will see, and just a ton of returning production, and even the pieces they brought in through the transfer portal, even if it's to provide depth at the very least, I really like what they did there. I think Eastern Michigan's going to be a very tough out. I trust this Ohio team more, though, and I think Parker Navarro is going to be able to overcome what the Eastern Michigan defense can do, and he's a good enough player to be able to evade some of the pressure that Eastern Michigan's going to be able to throw at you, and it's an Eastern Michigan team that, even though I like what they did in the portal, I think they got good talent, could see an up and down season. I do think they lose this one at home to Ohio, and the win streak for the Bobcats continues after the bye week into midweek action play. This is where the chaos really starts here. Rematch of the Mid-American Conference Championship game where Ohio demolished Miami. I mean, demolished them. I think the final score was 38-3, 38-6, something along those lines. Do I see the same thing happening here? No, because even though Miami did lose a lot of generational pieces within that program, such as Gabbard at the quarterback position, Taquan Finn is there. They got some good running back pieces. Wide receiver pieces are good. Even though you do lose your tight end duo and Matt Salopek and Ty Wise, I think that defense is still going to be solid. I like Ohio at home, though. And again, to me, Ohio still has a lot of talent returning from last year, especially offensively. And despite the talent gaps they have defensively, I think they're going to be able to figure a lot of things out. Miami has got talent gaps everywhere. They're fitting in things offensively, defensively. While I still think that's one of the better teams in the Mid-American Conference, Ohio's going to get the week of rest here, as is Miami, Ohio as well, but it's at home in Athens. I trust Ohio to be able to win that game. And here's another road game against a directional Michigan school in Western Michigan that, again, guys, really watch out for these directional Michigan schools this year. They were quite the surprise in conference last year, going 5-3. Brock Lowry is going to be playing quarterback again for you. Jalen Buckley could be one of the better running backs. In fact, I think he is one of the better running backs in the Mid-American Conference. They brought in some really, really experienced pieces through the transfer portal, most notably in Christian Leary, who is coming over from Georgia Tech and formerly was at Alabama. So they're bringing in some real good pieces there. Got some great defensive pieces yet again. I think going to be another tough out. I think Parker Navarro in this Ohio offense is going to be a little too much for the defense, and overall the Bobcats are going to be able to get it done on the road in action. It's where chaos reigns. Now, if you really want chaos to reign, you could have Ohio losing that game. I really have no problem with that, but I think their loss comes later. No, it's not to UMass. They did join the Mid-American Conference, though, this year, so welcome back to the MAC. UMass, finally nice to see them rejoin this conference that they were a part of for quite some time. I don't know that this season is going to go too well for the Minutemen. Just has seen very little success since becoming an FBS program. And then this one here against Buffalo. This is where I think the loss for the Bobcats does come. You have ripped off 8 wins. You've had a phenomenal season, and even if you lose this game to Buffalo, you're probably still going to the Mid-American Conference Championship game, and I just see you dropping this one on the road to the Bulls. Taquan Roberson is coming in at quarterback to replace CJ Ogbonna, and that could very well be an upgrade. Aljay Henderson is back. Some wide receiver pieces are back, led by Victor Snow. Defensively, you returned a ton of good pieces in there as well. And I think Buffalo, while they surprised last year, they could definitely surprise again this season. So I do think Ohio goes 8-4, 7-1 in conference, and I think that's probably good enough to get you back to the Mid-American Conference Championship. Watch out for those directional Michigan schools. Watch out for Bowling Green and Northern Illinois at home. And if it's either to Buffalo or one of those directional Michigan schools, I think they slip up somewhere. That non-conference slate is brutal. If they can get past it and the defense adjusts really early, I think this team can be absolutely spectacular this year, catch a lot of people's attention, but I think they got a real good shot, most importantly, to get back to a conference championship game. That's going to do it for me, but let me know what you think about the Bobcats in the comment section below. And remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. See y'all in the next one. Goodbye.